This is by far one of the greatest scenes ever filmed in the history of cinema. It was done for a film that came out in 2009. It was called Children of Men. And it's a movie about this. It's basically human beings stop having kids. They can't have kids anymore for some reason. And there's only one woman in the world who has given birth, and she is a Nigerian woman. And the movie doesn't get into details, or the film doesn't explain this, but there was a horrible war that had torn Europe apart, and there is a hatred for refugees, for immigrants in Europe. And so they force all of the immigrants or the migrants into this ghetto, and they force them to live there. And inside the ghetto, the migrants decide to do a revolution. They try to do an intifada. And so the British government decides just to annihilate everyone inside of the ghetto. And so they bomb the ghetto. And this is the scene that shows it. It is such a heart-wrenching scene. And I remember watching this scene and thinking to myself, oh my God, this is Gaza. That's what this scene reminds me of. Let's watch some more of this. This is such good directing, guys. The woman is screaming, her son is dead, it's heart-wrenching, it's sad, and then this, all of a sudden the scene just cuts into this tunnel, and you're looking at this grisly, horrendous tunnel, and this music. I mean, this is good directing. Masterful directing. Masterful directing. These are the intifadists. These are the insurrectionists. And by the way, this entire scene, it's a little bit over 6 minutes and a half. And for the entirety of the scene, the cameraman is holding the scene for one take. So for over 6 minutes, the cameraman had to hold the camera. There was no breaks. There was no cuts. Nothing. It was just one. This is one whole take. This is masterful directing. People, these are the leftists, right? These are the leftist armed rebels. They're kind of leading this insurrection, but they're really bad. They're in it. They're not really in it to help the people living in this ghetto. They're not really in it to help the migrants. They're really in it for themselves, or at least some of them are.
Okay, weapons down now! It's clear! Hands above your head and fucking move out
Can't be fucking
Go on your knees! On your knees!
You was 19!
Don't kill him! Don't kill him! Watch the flanks!
Key. Thank God. You'll be safe now. How's the child?
You put their lives at risk.
Just let it go. You don't know what you're doing.
No? Look around you. It's the uprising. They haven't.
I love it. The way that this guy, I love the lines that this guy says. Look around you. It's the uprising. And you hear the gunfire in the back. It's such a gloomy, ominous scene. It's time to bust out your wacky tobacco pipe and have ourselves a... Okay, I'm going to pull up the pipe, okay? Hold on.
Anyone seen the baby? Let's go. Not in front of the girl. Wait till we get around the corner and do them all. Come on!
The scene was glad. Passing the folks along the road and all of them were standing. All the lots and losses
okay, it's
that
okay.
are
No.
small games.
Sorry.
I love how the camera turns from this angle, from this position here, and the camera just turns. It's done so well. It's just, and it's not done in this smooth way. It's not done in this perfect way. It's just shaky, and it just turns like this, and you can see just nothing but destruction. Seeing mainly the people being shot here, they're Muslim people, and you see, I think this is the future. I think this is what's going to happen in Europe. Maybe not exactly like this, but I think eventually this is what's going to happen. There's going to be blood in Europe, and they're going to attack foreigners. They're going to attack migrants. They're going to put them in camps. This is what I foresee. I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I foresee. Here you have people with white flags, and they just get slaughtered. What does that remind you of? What a movie! Oh, this is in my top 10. I need to do a film. I need to do a film. I do need to do a film. I would love to do a film one day. I need to do a video. Top 10 best films of all time. Children of Men is on my top 10 list of best films of all time. Saving Private Ryan, and not in this particular order, but Saving Private Ryan, Braveheart, Gladiator, Come and See, City of Life and Death. That's 5 movies, and then you have Forrest Gump. Yeah, and I have to think more about it. I can't do this movie. Why not? This is too much. It is too much. No, you're right. This is horrifying, guys. This is horrifying. But you know what this reminds me of? Here's what the Israelis don't want you to see. The Hosperist. They don't want you to see this. Grandmother holding a white flag with her grandson gets shot down by an Israeli sniper. Let's give this a watch. This is the reality. And I remember watching this film again months ago, and I said, this is Gaza. I told myself, this is Gaza. Bam. Oh, it's just like that scene from Schindler's List where this guy is sniping people from the balcony. Yeah, what's the difference? Let's watch this again. Boom. Just shooting out. Yeah, that's right. That's the terrorist, guys. That's the yeah. I missed. Yeah, that's the terrorist. There is the terrorist guy. They're just fighting terrorists. It's just terrorists, guys. Just terrorists. Nothing to see here. Who cares? She's just a poor grant. She's a hijabi. Mr. Shoebot, I'm surprised. I'm honestly surprised that you don't have more followers or geopolitical breakdowns of what's happening in the world. You know what? I'll be honest with you, man. I'm not going to blow smoke up my. I'm actually shocked myself. I am. I'm shocked myself because I've been saying this shit since 2016. No one gives a shit. And then I saw a video recently. Some guy on YouTube did this video. I forgot the. I don't know the name of the author of the video, the channel that produced the video. But the title of the video was something like, "Why Germany will be the most powerful military in Europe." 2 million views. I said I've been saying this since 2016, and everybody laughed at me. But here we are. You know what, man? I really don't. I do want to grow my channel, but at the same time, I have to look at the good in everything, right? The good thing is that the channel, my channel is not popular, but there's a positive side to that, and the positive side is there's not a lot of weirdos who watch my videos. The problem with having a channel where you get a lot of views, you get a lot of weirdos. Trust me, I know from experience because at one point in time, my website was getting millions of views. When my website was getting millions of views, I was getting a ton of weirdos. And then when everything just kind of shrunk, I don't really see those weirdos as much anymore. So it's better. Yes, this is it's horrible. Horrible. Hence why I've been subscribed. I'm glad to have you on, Zen Master. Let me show you. I wasn't planning on doing this, but let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Finkelstein. Norman Finkelstein wrote this book in 2018. He has a whole chapter on how killing civilians is a part of policy in Israel. This is not just a bad sniper who's evil, no. Let me show you. Look what he says here. Quote from Amnesty International. Contrary to repeated allegations by Israeli officials of the use of human shields, Amnesty International found no evidence that Hamas or other Palestinian fighters directed the movement of civilians to shield military objectives from attacks. It found no evidence that Hamas or other armed groups forced residents to stay in or around buildings used by fighters, nor that fighters prevented residents from leaving buildings or areas which had been commandeered by militants. Amnesty, so let me fast forward here. In all of the cases investigated by Amnesty International of families killed when their homes were bombed from the air by Israeli forces, for example, none of the houses struck was being used by armed groups for military activities. Similarly, in the cases of precision missiles or tank shells which killed civilians in their homes, no fighters were present in the houses that were struck, and Amnesty International delegates found no indication that there had been any armed confrontation or other military activity in the immediate vicinity. But in fact, this is Finkelstein's words, Israeli soldiers used civilians, including children, as human shields by endangering their lives, by forcing them to remain in or near houses which they took over and used as military positions. Some were forced to carry out dangerous tasks such as inspecting properties or objects suspected of being booby-trapped. Soldiers also took positions and launched attacks from and around inhabited houses, exposing local residents to the danger of attacks, etc., etc. Now, let me show you this other thing here. Palestinian civilians, including women and children, were shot at short range when posing no threat in the lives of the Israeli soldiers, Amnesty further found. This is from 2008 in Operation Cast Lead. Palestinian civilians, quote, including women and children, were shot at short range when posing no threat to the lives of the Israeli soldiers, Amnesty further found, and there was no fighting going on in their vicinity when they were shot. A Human Rights Watch study documented Israel's killing of Palestinian civilians who were trying to convey their non-combatant status by waving a white flag. Same thing as now. Killing of Palestinian civilians who were trying to convey their non-combatant status by waving a white flag. Israeli forces had control of the areas in question. No fighting was taking place there at the time, and Palestinian fighters were not hiding among the civilians who were shot. In a typical incident, 2 women and 3 children from the Abd Rabbo family were standing for a few minutes outside their home, at least 3 of them holding pieces of white cloth, when an Israeli soldier opened fire, killing 2 girls aged 2 and 7 and wounding the grandmother and the 3rd girl. The Goldstone report concluded that the Israeli armed forces repeatedly opened fire on civilians who were not taking part in the hostilities and who posed no threat to them. And if you want to question the Goldstone report, Richard Goldstone was a Zionist, and he wrote an entire report exposing Israeli war crimes. Israeli armed forces had carried out direct intentional strikes against civilians absent any grounds which could have reasonably induced the Israeli armed forces to assume that the civilians attacked were in fact taking a direct part in the hostilities. Now check this out. They did a whole bunch of interviews of Israeli soldiers in which these Israeli soldiers bragged about killing civilians. They bragged about it. They said, oh, we killed people for fun. For fun. Post-invasion IDF testimonies corroborated the wanton killing of Palestinian civilians. Quote, you see people more or less running their life routine, taking a walk, stuff like that. Definitely not terrorists. I hear from, this is from a soldier. This is a quote from a soldier. So he said, we saw people who were definitely not terrorists. I hear from other crews that they fired at people there, tried to kill them. People didn't, this is from another soldier. People did not seem to be too upset about taking human lives. Here's a quote from another soldier. Everyone there is considered a terrorist, meaning it's open season on everybody. Here's a quote from another soldier. We were allowed to do anything we wanted. Who's to tell us not to? Here's a quote from another soldier. I understood that conduct there had been somewhat savage. If you sight it, shoot it. Here's a quote from another soldier. You are allowed to do anything you want for no reason other than it's cool. Even firing white phosphorus because it's fun. It's cool. You know what white phosphorus does to people? 1,500 degrees of heat on your skin. Oh my God. The absurdly lopsided Palestinian-Israeli casualty ratio attested that Cast-led was in reality not a war, but a massacre. I can go on, but I don't want to. I'll be honest with you guys. I can't. Let's go back to this. It's Gaza. When I see the film Children of Men, it's Gaza. This is Gaza. This is Gaza. And they say, oh my God, this argument is so insidious. I actually bought into this argument at one point. This argument that well, the Allies did it to Nazi Germany, so we can do it to Gaza. The Allies were more merciful than the Israelis. The Allies killed less than 1% of German civilians. The Israelis have already slaughtered, annihilated 1% of Gaza's population. Most of their victims are civilians, children, women, grandmothers. I can't co-sign this. it's just evil. I can't do it. That's it. At first I thought, okay, there was a massacre, okay, and then I saw it again and again and again. I saw the stories and I saw the videos, and I can't do this. And you can totally understand why the Muslim world would be riled up. You can totally see why people in Turkey are gathering by countless numbers in huge crowds, amassing huge crowds, calling for Turkey to do something against Israel. You can totally see why people are saying there needs to be a military coalition. You can totally see why people in Germany are saying we need to have an international force to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore in Gaza, in the Palestinian territories. The massacre of the al-Samuni family. Al-Samuni family was a wealthy family. They owned a number of homes. They basically owned a neighborhood in Gaza, which in Middle Eastern society is not uncommon, because it's common for people in Middle Eastern culture for the father to buy a property or to build a property, and then he'll build or purchase another property nearby for his son or for his daughter, so that she can live in a home with her husband, something like that. And they just have the whole family living in one neighborhood. That's what they do. And this family was massacred by the dozens. Because it was such a big neighborhood, the Israelis came in. They put about 6 military outposts within the neighborhood, and they basically forced the entire al-Samuni family to live in one house in the neighborhood. So 100 people were living in one house. And then one day the family decided to go outside and gather firewood. And they came back with their firewood, and the Israelis opened fire on them, and they killed dozens of them. Here is what the Goldstone report stated. Richard Goldstone, who was a pro-Israel Zionist, had to say about it when he did a speech in January of 2011 at the University of Stanford. He said, the single most serious incident reported in the Goldstone report was the bombing of the home of the al-Samuni family on January 4th, 2009. Members of the Givati Brigade of the IDF decided to take over the house of Salah al-Samuni as part of the IDF ground operation. They ordered its occupants to relocate to the home of Wa'el al-Samuni. It was located about 35 yards away and within sight of the Israeli soldiers. In the result, there were over 100 members of the family gathered in the single-story home of Wa'el al-Samuni. Early on the cold wintry morning of January 5th, several male members of the al-Samuni family went outside to gather firewood. They were in clear sight of the Israeli troops. Clear sight. As the men returned with the firewood, projectiles fired from helicopter gunships killed or injured them. Immediately after that, further projectiles hit the house. Immediately after that, further projectiles hit the house. 21 members of the family were killed, some of them young children and women. 19 were injured. Of those injured, another 18 subsequently died from their injuries. This evidence led the fact-finding mission to conclude that as a probability, the attack on the al-Samuni family constituted a deliberate attack on civilians. The crucial consideration was that the men, women, and children were known by the Israeli troops to be civilians and were ordered by them to relocate to a house that was in the vicinity of their command post. Members of the al-Samuni family had regarded the presence of the IDF as a guarantee of their safety. So here's a family. They did everything right. There were no terrorists around them. There were 6 Israeli outposts in their neighborhood. They followed the rules. Slaughtered. I have to, oh my God. I have to agree with people who are critical of Israel. I have to. I do not like the idea of sticking to a narrative no matter what. Even if the truth is right in front of your eyes, even if the reality is right in front of your eyes, I don't like to just stick with a narrative because, oh, you're some hospitalist who's expected to stick to the Israeli narrative. I that's bullshit. That's a complete betrayal of humanity, and I can't stand for that. In the beginning, I said, okay, there was a massacre. Hamas did it. Israel has a right to go to war. But I see stuff like this. I see stuff that's happening now. And I can't stand for it. It's awful. And they laugh as they kill. And they smirk as they kill. You know, they mocked Christ when he was hanging from a cross. They mocked Christ as he was hanging from a cross. You know what this is? It's the demon of Ham. It's the demon of Ham. Ham, see, Noah was suffering. Noah was in anguish because the world had been destroyed by a flood, and he went through the whole flood. It was awful. He gets off the ark, he builds a vineyard, and then he makes some wine, and he gets drunk, which sounds really good right about now. He gets drunk, and then he goes into his house, his little tent, and he's naked, because it's probably too, when you get drunk, it can get very hot. It's probably very hot, takes his clothes off, he's naked. And Ham comes over, and he uncovers his father's nakedness. He goes to his brothers Ham and he goes to his brothers Shem and Japheth, and he says, look at Daddy's naked and drunk. He's laughing at him, he's mocking his father. And the other two brothers, Japheth and Shem, Japheth being the patriarch of the Europeans, Shem being the patriarch of the Middle Eastern people, the Semitic race, Shem and Japheth get together and they put a cloth over their father, a cloak over their father. They don't mock their father. They don't laugh at their father. They cover their father. And the Bible says that they turned their heads away as they covered their father. But Ham mocked his father. Ham mocked his father. And Christ was naked on a cross, suffering through the cup of suffering. What did Jesus say to his father? He said, Father, if it be your will, let this cup pass me. Let this cup pass by me. The cup of what? The cup of wine. And in the Last Supper, he had the cup of wine. He says, this is my blood which will be given for the redemption of the sins of many. The cup of his suffering, the cup of wine. Wine represents blood. Wine represents suffering. Noah suffered under the vine, under the wine. Christ suffered in the cup of his suffering, and he was naked on the cross just as Noah was naked. And Ham laughed at him and mocked him, and the Jews mocked Christ as he was naked on the cross. They didn't turn their heads away. They mocked him as he was naked. They mocked him as he was going through the cup of his suffering. And at that moment, Shem, Israel, became Ham. And what does God tell Abraham's wife? He says, I'm going to give you a son. And she's laughing. And God didn't like that. And she gave birth, and she said, his name should be called Isaac, which means what? Laughter. Mocking. And so what do you see? What's the evil of Israel? Mockery. They slaughter people and they mock. That's the evil of Israel. It's mockery. And you see it. You see that spirit right there. I don't give a damn what anyone tells me. You see that spirit right there.